Officials have found another instance of voter fraud in the 2016 election, this time in the state of Colorado. Now, very interesting here. Now, officials in the state have charged Stephen Curtis with one count of forgery of a public record and a fifth-degree felony. That is a fifth-degree felony, an elections mail-in ballot offense, which is a misdemeanor. So basically, I'll explain what he did. Curtis is accused of filling out his ex-wife's ballot and forging her signature, which would, of course, be voter fraud. See, look at that. We found it. We found voter fraud. We knew it. It is rampant. Look at this guy. He is forging signatures for his ex-wife. Well, how did they find out? Well, officials in Weld County, Colorado, according to the Washington Post, said they learned of Curtis's allegedly fraudulent ballot when his ex-wife, Kelly Curtis, called to the local elections office in October asking about how she could cast a vote by mail from Colorado from South Carolina, her new home. Now, an election worker had reportedly told her in this call, "Hey man, we already received your ballot. Why are you calling? We already have your ballot." "What? No, I never sent one in." Kelly Curtis says, quote, "I was just completely stunned. I thought there had to be some kind of mistake." That's when verification judges for the Weld County Clerk and Recorder's Office ended up getting involved, because obviously it seems like we have a clear case of voter fraud. Quote, "We've compared her ballot signature just to the signatures on her registration," said Weld County Clerk and Recorder Carly Copps, who quickly determined the signatures didn't match, but noted the ballot was sent from Steve Curtis's home in Firestone, Colorado. Interesting. So, they investigated it, and they go and, they found it. They found it came from his home. Very interesting. Now, why is this even important? Why do I bring up this one guy, this one voter fraud guy? Well, Stephen Curtis, he's not just a regular run-of-the-mill voter. He's actually very active in Colorado politics. And he hosts a political talk show called Wake Up with Steve Curtis. Oh, interesting. Now, according to the website, his show is an aggressive political, social, and spiritual dialogue that aims to, quote, "unmask those right under our noses or across the country who are trying to undermine or destroy our game plans and, most importantly, our constitutional powers." How dare you undermine our game plans and our constitutional powers? Well, it seems like Stephen Curtis might be undermining something else. Election law. Now, you won't be surprised that Curtis is A, very conservative Republican, and B, he's a hypocrite. Because, of course, it turns out that Curtis was the chairman of the Colorado State Republican Party from 1997 to 1999. Oops. Not only that, but after he left the state party, he remained active in Colorado politics and eventually oversaw the Denver Tea Party Patriots Advisory Board in 2011. Okay, so long history with the Republican Party and with the Tea Party. Famous for, of course, bringing in voter ID laws, voter suppression. Now, this is probably the best part. Now, on October 6th, which is around the same time that he allegedly forged his wife's signature on this ballot, he had a conversation with another gentleman who wrote a book about, guess what? Voter fraud. Let's take a listen.
Voter fraud is not an easy crime to commit. I mean, with the computer it is, but in terms of the nuts and bolts of it and having people on the ground, it needs a certain cadre of devoted criminal Democrats. As
somebody that has voted for a few decades here, sometimes we used to see poll watchers, standing by, and there'd always be some election official there to get you checked in, and then there'd just be somebody sitting there, and that person was a poll watcher, and it could be a Republican, it could be a Democrat, but just someone to kind of keep an eye on things. And more and more, I see less and less of that on the ground kind of watching. And at this point, if we can't ID in many places in this country, if you cannot be asked to show an ID in order to vote, this shows me intent. There can be no other reason. This false flag of, you're being racist. If you ask somebody for, some kind of an identification to make sure that they are who they say they are before you give them a vote, suddenly that's become racist. And this seems to be a special or just an ongoing favorite trick of the Democrat Party is to just charge racism. Conservatives back down, judges back down, everybody backs down because they don't want to be called a name, no matter how false it is. And then the Democrats just do what they want. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that virtually every case of voter fraud I can remember in my lifetime was committed by Democrats. Am I onto something here, or do I just not have the facts?
Oops. Yes, you would be wrong. You committed voter fraud. So no, it wouldn't be Democrats. It would be you. The hypocrisy. Democrats, man, with your voter fraud. That's how they always win. They always win with the voter fraud. We need the poll watchers. We need someone to watch the polls to make sure they don't do voter fraud. No, maybe we need someone to watch you so that you don't do voter fraud. Stephen. No, Jeff, look, you don't understand. This guy was probably just testing the system to make sure, to see how easy it is to be voter fraud, so we can do more legislation to protect the integrity of our votes. That's all it was. That's all it was. Really? Look, they're not making that argument. Not yet. But I've heard that argument before. A lot of the other Republicans that have been caught doing this always go back to, no, I was just testing the system. See, we need voter ID because, look, I just tried to do, I just got caught trying to do in-person voter fraud or voter fraud of some type. Well, no, you got caught. That means the system worked. And we don't need additional voter suppression because that's what this all is about. This is all about trying to keep people who are Democrats away from the polls. People who are elderly, who are poor, who are minorities, who can't easily get these voter IDs, and they always make a big fuss. Well, why don't you just go out and get a voter ID? Well, a lot of people who are poor don't have cars, or they don't have time. They're working 2 jobs. They can't get to that polling station. Oh, but they'll mail it out to you. Will they? Are you sure? Maybe some will. Some don't. And you still might have to pay a fee to do so, which might not be something that someone on a fixed income can afford. This is voter suppression, and it ends up targeting minorities. He says that he has a big problem with Democrats calling it racist. Well, what else do you call it? It is voter suppression, and it impacts minorities. That's what it's about. Look, as far as in-person voter fraud, it is rare. Now, again, it wouldn't. The voter ID, the thing that you keep talking about, is not something that would solve what you were doing. And it doesn't actually solve in-person voter ID because it almost never happens. There are other ways to do this. Ways, ironically, that you just tried to do by forging your ex-wife's signature and trying to send her own, his own choice for president with her name on it. This guy, man, hypocrite and even criminal. I mean, hey, look, you did voter fraud. You're a criminal. I'm just saying. The law is the law. So if you're a conservative that cares so much about the integrity of your votes, of your voting, then, look, he would say, what I did was wrong, absolutely wrong, and I deserve to get punished for it. Let's see if he does that. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.